What I'm dealing with is hard because it involves more than just my heart. It involves a lot of little hearts. You know, we have 4 kids, and divorce is never easy. And we're both from divorced families.
For years, Kelly Clarkson kept her pain private. She smiled through the heartbreak, laughed through the legal battles, and sang through the sleepless nights. She built an empire out of her emotions, turning every tear into a chart-topping anthem, every wound into a Grammy-worthy record. But there was always something she held back, something she never quite said out loud, something about Brandon Blackstock that the world simply never knew. Until now. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most talked about celebrity divorces of the last decade. Not just the headlines, not just the courtroom drama, but the quiet, private truths that Kelly herself has only recently begun to speak about. The revelations are surprising. The story is complicated, and the woman at the center of it all is more resilient than most people ever gave her credit for. This is the real story of Kelly Clarkson, Brandon Blackstock, and everything nobody knew. To understand how Kelly Clarkson ended up in the marriage she eventually had to escape, you first have to understand where she came from. Kelly Brianne Clarkson was born on April 24, 1982, in Fort Worth, Texas. She grew up in a working-class household with a mother who taught first grade and a father who worked as an engineer. From the outside, it might have looked like a typical American childhood, but it crumbled when Kelly was just 6 years old. Her parents divorced, and the family was split apart in ways that left lasting scars. Her brother went to live with their father, her sister moved in with an aunt, and Kelly stayed with her mother. Just like that, the family she knew was gone. That early experience of abandonment would shape Kelly in ways that took decades to fully understand. She grew up in Burleson, Texas, raised in a deeply religious, conservative household where faith was a constant, but emotional connection was complicated. She threw herself into music, not as a hobby, but as a lifeline. When a choir teacher named Cynthia Glenn heard her singing casually in a school hallway and insisted she audition for the choir, it was the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. Kelly auditioned. Kelly got in. And from that moment, her path was set. By the time Kelly graduated high school in 2000, she had received full scholarship offers from prestigious institutions, including the University of Texas at Austin, the University of North Texas, and the Berklee College of Music. She turned them all down. She had dozens of songs already written and a burning desire to make it on her own terms. She worked odd jobs, recorded demos that went nowhere, moved to Los Angeles, was turned away by label after label, and had her apartment destroyed in a fire that left her homeless. She came back to Texas, waited tables, promoted energy drinks, and worked as a telemarketer. And then in 2002, at the urging of friends, she auditioned for a little-known TV show called American Idol. She won by a landslide. With 58% of the public vote, Kelly Clarkson became the very first American Idol champion, performing at the Kodak Theater on September 4, 2002. Her debut single shattered a 38-year-old chart record previously held by the Beatles, and her first album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. Within a year of winning a television competition, she was one of the most talked-about artists in the country. And through all of it, she carried that quiet wound, the one left by a father who walked away and never truly came back. When Kelly met Brandon Blackstock in 2006 at a rehearsal for the Academy of Country Music Awards, it was brief and unremarkable. He was a talent manager with deep roots in the music industry, the son of legendary manager Narvel Blackstock, who famously managed country superstar Reba McEntire. Brandon moved in powerful circles, knew how the industry worked, and had a kind of confident ease that was hard to ignore. But in 2006, nothing happened. They went their separate ways. Years passed. Their paths crossed again. And this time, something clicked. Kelly, who had spent so much of her life guarding her heart, who had written song after song about love from a distance, found herself falling for someone in a way she described as unlike anything she had ever experienced. They became close. They fell in love. And by December 2012, Brandon got down on one knee and proposed. Kelly said yes. In October 2013, they married. Brandon brought 2 children from a previous marriage into the relationship, and together they built what looked from the outside like a beautiful blended family. In 2014, Kelly gave birth to their daughter, River Rose. In 2016, their son, Remington Alexander, arrived. Kelly spoke openly and warmly about Brandon in interviews. She said she had never felt a connection like this. She described him as her person, her partner, her anchor. For a woman who had spent her childhood watching her own family fall apart, this felt like everything she had ever wanted. But behind the warmth and the smiles and the public declarations of love, the reality of the marriage was quietly becoming something very different. Here is where the story gets complicated, and where Kelly's recent honesty has revealed things that most people never truly understood about what was happening inside that marriage. For years, Kelly has hinted at a deep loneliness that grew within her during the marriage. She has spoken about feeling like a single woman even while she was married. She has talked about carrying the emotional weight of the household largely on her own, managing her career, raising her children, and trying to hold together a partnership that was increasingly one-sided. But the full picture of what was happening, who Brandon Blackstock really was behind closed doors, and what Kelly discovered during the divorce process, is something far more layered than the tabloid headlines ever captured. What many people did not know, and what Kelly has only recently begun to speak about more directly, is the extent to which the power dynamics within the marriage were shaped by Brandon's role as a professional manager. Not just anyone's manager, her manager. For a significant period, Brandon Blackstock was not just Kelly's husband. He was also part of her professional team, creating a situation in which the personal and the professional were deeply, uncomplicatedly entangled. And when the marriage began to deteriorate, so too did those professional boundaries. During the divorce proceedings, disputes arose that went well beyond the typical questions of property and custody. There were legal battles over the Montana ranch the couple had shared, arguments over financial arrangements, and, critically, questions about whether Brandon and his management company, Starstruck Management, had charged Kelly fees in ways she believed were improper. The California Labor Commissioner became involved. It was alleged that Starstruck had been acting as a talent agency without the appropriate license, which has specific legal implications in California. This was not simply a couple disagreeing over who gets the house. This was a situation in which Kelly Clarkson found herself entangled with a professional and personal partner in ways that made it extraordinarily difficult to fully separate one from the other. What nobody fully saw from the outside was how deeply this complicated the emotional toll of the divorce. It was not just the end of a marriage. It was the unraveling of an entire ecosystem of trust, personal, professional, and financial, all at once. When Kelly filed for divorce in June 2020, citing irreconcilable differences, she was not making an impulsive decision. This was the result of years of quiet struggle, years of trying to hold something together that had been quietly falling apart. The filing came during an already turbulent time. The world was in the grip of a global pandemic. Kelly was producing and hosting her popular daytime talk show from home, and she was simultaneously navigating one of the most painful personal experiences of her life. The legal process was extensive. The couple's assets were significant, and their situations were complicated by the professional entanglements described above. The Montana ranch became a particular flashpoint. Both sides fought over it, with Brandon seeking a share of the property. The court ultimately ruled in Kelly's favor, finding that the ranch belonged to her. Even so, Brandon remained on the property for some time, a situation that, by any measure, added ongoing tension and difficulty to what was already an emotionally exhausting process. In November 2020, a judge granted Kelly primary custody of River Rose and Remington Alexander. This was a significant legal victory, but it did not make the emotional reality of the situation any easier to navigate. Kelly had to protect her children from the noise of a very public legal battle, while simultaneously managing a major career, a television show, and her own grief. And it was genuine grief. Make no mistake about that. Kelly Clarkson is not someone who walks away from love easily. She poured everything she had into that marriage. She believed in it deeply. The end of it was not a relief. It was a loss, even if it was ultimately the right decision. In February 2022, Kelly made a deeply personal decision that had nothing to do with Brandon and everything to do with her own sense of self. She legally changed her name to Kelly Brianne, dropping the surname Clarkson, which she had always associated with her father, Stephen Michael Clarkson. She made clear that she would continue using Kelly Clarkson professionally, but that the legal change was about reclaiming something for herself, about choosing her own identity rather than carrying a name tied to a man who had left her family when she was 6 years old and never truly came back. Stephen Michael Clarkson's absence from Kelly's life had cast a long shadow. He left when she was a small child, and despite occasional attempts to rebuild some kind of relationship over the years, they were never able to close that distance. The hurt was real and lasting. It found its way into her music, most powerfully in the song Piece by Piece, which describes her father's abandonment and contrasts it with the love she believed she had found with Brandon. The irony of that song, written as a tribute to Brandon's steadiness and devotion, became one of the more painful footnotes of the divorce. The man she had lifted up in music as the antidote to her father's absence became, in the end, another source of heartbreak. This is not said to condemn Brandon Blackstock as a person. Marriages are complicated. People are complicated. But for Kelly, who carried a childhood wound about men who leave, the dissolution of her marriage could not have been just a practical matter. It was deeply personal in ways that went all the way back to that 6-year-old girl in Burleson, Texas, watching her family fall apart. What is perhaps most remarkable about Kelly Clarkson's story is not the pain, it is what she has done with it. In June 2023, she released her 10th studio album, Chemistry. It is widely regarded as some of the most powerful work of her career, honest, emotionally raw, beautifully sung, and deeply personal. Critics praised it for its depth and authenticity. Audiences responded to it because they recognized in it something true. Here was a woman who had every reason to retreat into bitterness, and instead chose to make art. She has also continued to thrive professionally. Her daytime talk show has connected with audiences who love her for exactly who she is: funny, unfiltered, generous, and real. In 2023, she made the bold decision to relocate to New York City with her children to film the 5th season of The Kelly Clarkson Show, and the move represented something larger than logistics. It was a fresh start, a new chapter, a city that does not ask where you came from, only what you are going to do next. When it comes to the question of future relationships, Kelly has been thoughtful and measured. She has shared that her children have expressed a preference for her to remain focused on them rather than dating, and she has honored